So, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Abramowitz. I'm the CEO of the Petey Greene program. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And I was curious about how to even start tonight. So I want to start with this. I want you all to imagine something. I want you to imagine a white Jewish basketball player 50 years old, and there you go, Paul Cousy, and he's playing basketball, and he's playing with all these different kinds of men, young and old. They are way faster than him, they are way quicker than him, and they are far better athletes than him. And yet, he's playing basketball on this court in an adult league, and he's keeping his own. Like, he's hanging in there. He's running up and down the court, making some defensive plays, but basically, Charlie Hustle. He's hustling all over the place, and he's using his brain. He's passing to the open guy, he's unselfish, and he's living his teenage life at 50 years old, just playing his heart out. And then about a half hour goes by, and an alarm goes off. And this alarm is an indicator to the men on that basketball court that they have 5 minutes to find their way to their cells. Because in 5 minutes, there's going to be a count. And if they're not there for that count, then something pretty bad in the prison system is going to happen. That was me, almost 10 years ago, playing basketball, running around like I was 25 years old or younger, and in probably the best physical shape of my entire life. I never imagined at that time that I'd be standing up on this stage, be the CEO of a national nonprofit, or that I would have found that passion that wakes me up every day and with such vigor that I just can't wait for my day to get started. It's an amazing thing. It really is. There are many people in this room that have helped me on that journey, and you're going to meet a bunch of them tonight. You're also going to be part of what I hope is going to be a lively discussion and some entertainment, and we're just going to have a good time. But I come here 9.5 years after leaving my journey in incarceration, and with an amazing organization called the Petey Greene program. And before we really get to the heart of the matter tonight and talk about the work that we do, I just have to tell you a little bit about the organization, because since its founding 15 years ago, the Petey Greene program, which was founded by Princeton University, has now become the largest nonprofit multi-state volunteer tutoring and educational support initiative in the entire country. The Petey Greene program has reached over 20,000 students and had over 8,000 volunteer placements in its time in existence, and tutors at over 120 tutoring sites. In the past year and a half alone, we've built out and expanded our College Bridge program, which helps individuals that secure their high school diploma or GED transition into college. We've launched the Puckhammer Center for Educational Justice and Equity, a national think and action tank, and recently hired our first DEI fellow. We began training for individuals with longer stays in the carceral setting to become tutors themselves so they can earn a living inside the walls and they can provide tutoring benefit to their brethren or sisters behind the walls. In the past year alone, we've led over 35 workshops, keynote addresses, and presentations across the country, including 4 reentry simulations. The Petey Greene program recently launched a new 5-year strategic plan. We've received pro bono support from Next PR, which is a New York PR firm, and recently received a Compass grant, securing additional financial sustainability support here in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. We've run our amazing 5K run walk, this year expanded here in Philadelphia. It's in New Jersey and Boston, and also had some people walking in Washington, D.C. We recently became a charity sponsor for the New York and Philadelphia marathons. We have youth programming across the country in blending basketball programs and art programs into tutoring. We recently received the Ascendium grant, and we are committed to changing lives of young people and those that are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated across the country. It's a lot for one organization, but we are filled with passion, and we're proud to be here in Philadelphia, my hometown, and I'm proud to have my Philadelphia staff here as well, doing just some great work with those people that are touched by our justice system. So the Petey Greene program, I guess we can move through some of the slides. Our mission is pretty clear. It's to educate those that are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated with high-quality volunteer tutoring, and to make sure that we educate those. And we use college students from across the country, and those college students are trained and prepared to work with men and women as they come home. I often say I took my job for two reasons. One reason is we get people smarter, and the second reason is we are changing culture because we're bringing young people into a setting that they may never have had to experience before, and seeing the humanity that's behind the walls of our prisons and jails. We are well over 16,000 and closer to 20,000 students served, and over 50 facilities currently in reentry programs, in 3,200 volunteers. We are just doing amazing work throughout the country and organizationally. We do want to thank some of our sponsors for tonight. I know there's some people here from Sattel Institute, Jake Dawson in particular. Thank you for your friendship, as well as the Economy League and GPLEX, the Greater Philadelphia Leadership Exchange. Looking forward to their upcoming trip to San Diego. And one of our panelists tonight is going to be on there. It lives in San Diego. So excited to make that connection. So everybody up on this incredible panel tonight has really done remarkable work in the area of justice, criminal justice, and really educating people throughout the Philadelphia metropolitan area, and also doing it nationally. We're going to have some other guests on our panel today too. But I want to call them up individually, and I want you to come up and take a seat so we can get started, because we have a lot to talk about. First up, I want to call our guest of honor tonight, Larry Miller. Woo! So Larry and I had an incredible day today. We went back to my alma mater, Central High School, and Laila, his daughter, who I'm calling up next, was with us when she was also a graduate of Central. And Larry got to tell his story today, as he's going to tonight, and sit anywhere you're comfortable. And I'd like to call Laila, his daughter, and also the author of Jump, the story of Larry's journey. So next up on the show list is somebody that I first met when I came home within a week. I don't even think he knew that at the time I met him, I had my ankle bracelet still on. But I went to attend a class of his for helping people find career opportunities. And Mike Robinson's been like a brother and great friend to me ever since. So Mike, come on up. So next up, I want to call Sulaiman Rahman, from President and CEO of Diverse Force, who also a G-plexer. And the next person also has a really special place for me, because I work with him in his journey, and he's done remarkable things since he's come home, and he's in film and production, and I'm trying to get him to do a movie about me, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Shuja, coming up. Shuja Moore. So the next two guys are surprise guests. They're surprise guests because they drove all the way from Maine to be on this panel, and I happened to meet them at a conference in Atlanta, I believe, and they had this thing with them, and I'm like, seriously, dudes? They're Brandon Brown and Jeremy Hiltz. They'll tell you their story a little bit tonight, but if you if you had a chance to see the prison door that was in the dessert area, yeah, that belongs to these two gentlemen, and they're intimately familiar with that door for many reasons, and they'll share that with you. So this is our wonderful panel, and we're gonna get into it because you guys have a lot to share and we have a lot to learn. But I'd like to kick us off tonight by throwing everyone. We'll kind of jump around a little bit. We'll start down at that end of the table first. But what I'd like you to do is tell us a little bit about the work you do and what you do. And because this is kind of changing the game, is the theme for tonight. We're going to be changing the game. I want you to tell me your favorite sports team. Wait, but before you do that.
Eagles.
So before you do that, no pressure. There you go. All right. Why don't you guys kick us off?
This is working. My name is Jeremy Hiltz. I'm the CEO and founder of Recovery Connections in Maine, an addiction treatment program in Maine that I founded after I was incarcerated. We were able to build reentry houses around. We have 4 reentry houses, a 6-month residential treatment program, and an outpatient program. We added primary care to that to help guys out there, and we had vocational service and things like that. And through that work, I was able to obtain my prison door because they were tearing down a part of that prison, and I asked them for it. And through that relationship, they gave me the door. My roommate that was behind that door with me tonight is here with me, Michael. But we started a podcast. We've been bringing this door around the country, putting in juxtapositions to really tell a story about what's going on. We had it in the middle of Times Square, and we had thousands of people just walking by it like it wasn't even there. It's really we had it out in front of, I'm actually going to get into my favorite sports teams. I'm actually from Titletown. That's up in Boston. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but, oh, hey now. We had it in front of the Fenway Park, and it was like we look at these metaphors like America's favorite pastime is baseball and mass incarceration. So that's what we're here to do, is talk about these types of issues. So I appreciate you.
Thanks. I just want to give everybody a warning. This is changing the game. So there's a shot clock tonight. So if I interrupt you with the shot clock violation, you'll know. Shoot.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Jeff, and shout out to the whole Petey Greene team. I really feel honored to sit on this panel with all these distinguished gentlemen. My name is Shuja Moore. Feel free to call me boss if that's easier for you, boss. Nah, my nickname is Shu, so if that's easier for you, feel free to call me Shu. And I'm really, really fortunate in life. I get to, blend storytelling with community advocacy. So I tell stories from people who don't usually get their full stories put out in the media, and find a way to connect that with doing social good. And the reason why I got here, although I'm really proud of what I do now and what I have going on, I'm really embarrassed with how I got there. Because it just came down to this. From the hood, I thought I needed to carry guns to protect myself, and I found myself in a situation where I pulled a gun on a group of guys who I thought were going to try to beat me up, and he grabbed a gun, we wrestled for it, a shot went off, and somebody lost their life. And that happened really almost 20 years ago, October 17th in 2004. So we're at the 20-year anniversary. And everything that I do moving forward is about how do we stop people from making those decisions, making those choices, and ultimately losing lives. And so, again, I would just want to thank you, Jeff, for this platform, and I look forward to connecting with you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sulaiman Rahman. I'm the CEO of Diverse Force. Diverse Force, we, one of our signature programs that's probably most related to the work that's happening here is a program called Diverse Force on Boards, where we have a professional network, over 20,000 professionals, and we train mid to senior level leaders of color to serve on nonprofit boards all throughout the region. We've partnered with University of Penn. We've now graduated over 330 alumni from the program. They filled over 300 board seats all throughout the region. We do executive search in the nonprofit sector as well, which close to 100 searches where we help to diversify nonprofit organizations that are serving in communities of color, but many times are led by folks who are not people of color or have that diversity in leadership. I also serve on a board that is near and dear to my heart, that I'm chair the board for Mastery Schools, which is 24 K through 12 schools. What's special about this network is that they've turned around, they're turnaround schools. So they've taken some of the worst performing schools in neighborhoods that are likely to be pipelines to prison and make them high performing schools, which has just been really great work as well. So I look forward to the conversation. Of course, my favorite team is the Eagles, of course, and that's all I got to say.
Mike Robinson. I'm not with his organization. I'm with Temple. So Temple University, yeah, they got me, man. Jeff, no, I'm just kidding.
I owe you one.
As long as I get the CEO's salary, you know. I'm the director of community outreach and hiring for Temple University. My first 7 years with Temple was. It began in 2011. My first 7 years, I was one of the HR directors, and then since that time, I've now oversee a program that does workforce readiness. It's an outward-facing initiative, so we help Philadelphians find work, those that are unemployed. And we do have a niche component to my office where we serve those who were formerly incarcerated. Every week for the last 3 years, I facilitate a workshop with those who just came out, and I work with a parole agent, and I speak to a group, and we talk about workforce readiness and what employers' expectations are. So I've been doing that with reentry candidates for the last 3 years, and then we host a 8-week training program for anybody that's workforce readiness, that deals with resume construction, job search tactics, interview skills, to help people move from unemployment to employment. In Philadelphia, Temple University in North Philly, which is one of the most impoverished sections of the city, we're happy to say that we've hired at the university 11% of our entire staff is from, I'm talking about Temple as a whole. 11% of our entire staff is from North Philly, and that translates to about $52 million, $53 million in cumulative income that goes back into the community. And as I said, North Philly has a lot of issues, and we're happy to be an anchor in North Philly. We're happy to be ranked number 85 out of the 4,000 universities that exist in this country. And we're proud to be a part of the reentry community, serving that community and helping people that are most vulnerable, you know, find their way.
We know your favorite team's the Owls. There's Temple Owls.
I'm going to start with my favorite team, the Eagles, and get it out of the way. So, my name is Larry Miller. I currently am the chairman of the advisory board for the Jordan brand at Nike. This is my lovely daughter here who encouraged me to write a book and share my story. And basically, I grew up here in Philadelphia, in West Philly, in and out of trouble as I was growing up. The last time I was incarcerated, I decided to change my life through education. Was able to take college classes inside of jail, which was 30 miles from here, Graterford, and started taking classes inside in it. And at that time, they had a program where you could actually live in these trailers outside the wall and leave every day and go to school and just have to be back by 8 o'clock in the evening. And when I heard about that program, I was like, well, if I got to do time, that's how I want to do it. But once I got into the program, I really started to believe that I could change my life. And I think the reason that we decided to do this and to write this book is because I think my story is a really good example of how someone who's been in the system, who, I mean, it's not like I was I was a criminal. And it's someone who has been and lived that life can actually change their life and become somebody that contributes to their community and contributes to society. And so it's been amazing for us over the last couple of years. We've been going around the country talking to different people. We've been at a number of institutions, Temple, of course, my alma mater, Wharton, Harvard, MIT. I mean, it's been pretty amazing. And to me, what I really like about the fact that we're hitting places like that is that these are decision makers. And the idea is to get in front of decision makers and say, hey, here's an example of someone that was given an opportunity, took advantage of that opportunity, and was able to do some pretty amazing things through that process. So the whole idea is to get people to believe that folks can change their life and that they can, like I said, make a contribution. And so that's been our focus from day one. And we're going to continue to do that, and hopefully can have an impact on how the system operates, and the fact and an impact on people being able to change their life. Statistically, something like 92% of people are going to get out of prison at some point. The goal should be they come out better people than they were when they went in. And the only way that's going to happen is if we start to do things and change the way we approach incarcerating people. That's the only way that's going to happen. And so again, we've been, kind of singing that song for the last few years and plan to continue to do it. And we both are working with organizations. One of the incredible things that I've realized since all this happened is that there are a lot of organizations like Petey, Greene, and other organizations out there that are doing good work. And so how can we support those organizations? How can we, help them to do even more? So that's been kind of our goal and our mission since all this started.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Hi, my name is Laila Lacey. Thank you, Jeff, for inviting me here today. I'm honored to be at this table. I am the co-author of Jump, My Secret Journey from the Streets to the Boardroom. It's the story of my dad's life and his journey from the person that he used to be to the man that he is now. My goal initially was basically to help people to shift the perspective and the perception of incarcerated people. In this country, I think that statistically, there's something like half of us are related to someone who was justice affected. So I felt like it was just time for us to stop pushing them to the shadows and acting like they don't exist, warehousing these people. We are losing some of the best and brightest and greatest minds to mass incarceration. And the fact that when people have served their time, they are still, in a way, incarcerated. They are not embraced, they are not supported, they have not received, many times have not received the rehabilitative skills to make them be a better person than they were when they went in, and all they know is what got them there in the first place. So I figured, I felt that it was a perfect opportunity to share a shining example of what can be versus what we've seen. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Jeff, thank you for the last-minute invite. We really appreciate it. My name is Brandon Brown, and I, like so many people on the panel, am a directly impacted person. I was arrested at 21 and sentenced to 27 years in prison with all but 17 suspended, also as a perpetrator of gun violence in my community. But I found redemption through prison education, so I'm actually a certified Petey Greene tutor, so shout out for that. And I discovered Petey Greene when I was going through my college program while I was incarcerated. So through a little more than 13 years of incarceration, I was able to obtain an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, and the first half of my PhD before I came home 3 years ago. In my day job, I'm the executive director of an organization called Youth-Led Justice, which does restorative justice diversion with youth out of the system. So we take kids who have been arrested, and if they complete our program, then they avoid the carceral space. And my passion in life is the podcast that we do that Jeremy told you about. With my PhD, what I study is narratives and how narratives continue to keep the criminal injustice system perpetuating the same results that it has historically. And I believe that we have a vehicle with our prison door to use that as a piece of art that prompts conversations that wouldn't happen otherwise. And we know that that's true because that's how we were able to meet Jeff, and that's how we were able to meet a lot of people in our community. So I know that when I was in prison, that same prison door was the thing that kept my story and my hopes and my dreams suppressed. And so now we're able to drive this 190-pound prison door around the country and use it as a microphone instead of a tool of suppression. And it's one of the honors of my life to be able to do that work with a very good friend of mine who's making a difference in his community every day as well.
Wow. Remarkable, isn't it? So I'm going to jump around a little bit because I think all of you have a special niche, but I want to go back to Larry for a minute. We spent this morning at my alma mater, Central High School, and then we met with some students there, and then Beyond Literacy, Adult Literacy Agency in Philly. And Larry, we had some conversations in our travels today, and it struck me because one of the things that we all recognize when you've done time is that your family does time with you, and how remarkable is it that you've been able to, your daughter's been able to tell the story for you. Can you tell us and share with us a little bit about your insight of why you decided after all these years, you made it to the top of the chain of one of the largest organizations in the world, in the sports world at least, and what prompted you to come out and begin to really educate people and dive into the justice space?
So for almost 40 years, I hid from my background. I lived without folks I was really close to and worked with on a day-to-day basis having any idea of my background. And the main reason was I was afraid that at some point something would come out and it would ruin everything that I had built up to that point. And so I lived with this anxiety and nervousness for almost 40 years of hoping that something didn't come out or didn't happen. And throughout that time, I ended up I had nightmares waking up in a cold sweat and nightmares of going back to jail. I had migraines so bad I ended up in ER a few times. And it was all because I was carrying all this stress and anxiety around because I was afraid that somehow the story would come out. In the meantime, this young lady was continuing to encourage me that I should share this story. And so finally, it got to a point where I agreed with her, that I realized that the story could motivate and inspire some folks. And then the other thing that I thought about is that, I've been so blessed in my life that if I didn't share this story, if I didn't try to help other people, then I wouldn't be showing my gratitude for how blessed my life has been. So the more I thought about it and the more we talked about it, I just agreed that it was time to share the story. And I couldn't think of a better person to share it with because I figured, no matter what I tell her, she's still got to love me. You know what I mean? But I think it was a lot easier for me because it was her, for me to open up and share. And it was a challenging process for us. I mean, we went through some rough conversations and some rough talks, some points where it's like, okay, I need a break, Dad. We need to back up. And but again, to me, as we kind of talked and we kind of went through the process, the nightmares stopped, the migraines stopped, and I think it was because again I was letting this burden out. And the other thing to me, like I said, there were a lot of folks that I worked with over the years that there are people I considered family. We were so close, but they had no clue of my background. And when I was when I knew we were going to do this, I had a list of people that I wanted to talk to before they heard it some other way, that they heard it directly from me. And at the top of that list were Michael Jordan and Phil Knight. And it was during the pandemic, and I ended up reaching out to both of them and kind of sharing this story with them. And they both were encouraging. They both said, hey, this is a story that needs to be told, and if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate. And they've both been extremely helpful and supportive throughout this process. But yeah, it's been like a burden has been lifted off of my shoulders. And La mentioned something today that is absolutely the case, is that The really big benefit of this is that we were able to do it on our own terms. It's like we were able to tell the story and we were able to control the narrative versus somehow it comes out and then I got media people calling and saying, hey, and then we're trying to defend. This way, we were able to tell the story, like I said, on our own terms and we were able to control the narrative.
So that's so important, being able to control the narrative of that story. And Shuja, I want to talk to you for a minute because, you and I go way back. Wasn't long when you came home, we started working together, and then I moved up to a position at Jev's Human Services, and was able to work with you and get you into CareerLink, where you did some amazing work sharing your story. But your career is all about storytelling, and I know I met your parents before, and I was wondering if you could just let everybody know I'm amazed at the series that you've put out, Walkies. And can you share that with everyone, and also a little bit more about what it's like to share your journey in nationally recognized films?
Sure. So Jeff is being a little, I don't know, vague. I essentially stalked him for months on end, scrolled every social media post he did, found where he was at, and would pop up there. And finally, I caught his attention and told him, at that time I had been working on a web series about how people change their life around after being formerly incarcerated, because I had been out for 3 years and wasn't nothing working, no jobs. I was running up debt, was barely able to pay my bills. I was working dead-end jobs, and I wanted to do something significant. I wanted to change the game, change the narrative, and do something impactful, but I didn't really have a platform and opportunity to do that. So I learned about Jeff. Like I said, I stalked him. And probably the third or fourth time that we kind of ran into each other, he said, let's schedule a meeting. We talked, and my career was able to be launched from there. I showed him the web series I was working on, and that was like my resume. With a little bit of resources, this is what I can do. And I forget your name. What was your name? Brandon, Larry. You kind of keep hearing the same word come up over and over again, narrative. What are the stories that we tell around the carceral experience, people with criminal records? For so long, we weren't really in charge of what is being told about us. You hear about a crime, it makes the headline, it's sensationalized because we got to scare folks, right? And everybody who kind of falls under the bucket of having a criminal record is the boogeyman. And so I really want to thank you for your work, but also you too, Larry. I mean, it really, is it Laila? You probably do know, but in case you don't know, your book is going to touch so many people beyond what you even know. Because I was one of those people incarcerated, grasping at stories that I could find inspiration from. And I know, as a West Philly guy, I don't want to reveal the book. I haven't read it yet. It's on my radar. But I am familiar with some of your background, and, it isn't the prettiest of pictures. And so to be forthcoming about how you can truly change and leading the narrative in that way is going to be very inspirational and open a lot of doors for a lot of people, such as myself, who've had doors closed on them because of their past. So thank you for that, and thank you for the work you're doing as well. To Jeff's point, the reason why I got into storytelling in the content space is because I had made the media. First, my name is Shuja. It's very Googleable, very easy. There's not too many other Shujas out there. Again, someone lost their life, and I say that embarrassingly and humbly. I'm cognizant of that every time I wake up, and all the work that I do is about how do we prevent this from happening in the future. But society will forever lock me out and close the door behind that just because of the headline in and of itself. And so I knew that my story doesn't start and end on October 17th in 2004, and I needed to get in front of how do I tell a story around who I am and what I'm doing. But I ended up telling the stories of everybody else except myself. And so I created a web series called Walkies. Walkie is a Pennsylvania prison term for kind of your best friend in prison. And in the show, it's 15-minute episodes. You can go to walkiesfilms.com to watch them. But we just talk about the transformation stories. What led somebody to prison? What was that awakening moment on the inside? And then how do you change your community and culture once you're released? And that allowed me to continue to do these type of stories. And the project that I have out now is about how to wipe your criminal record away. It's called Pardon Me. Got my man Jeff in the background. He's one of the talking heads in there from the Economy League. Yeah, you can clap him up. It's cool. But yeah, in 32 minutes, we make an economic argument for how we're really leaving a lot of tax money on the table because we're not allowing people to get jobs. Like they did their crime 10, 20, 30 years ago. let's allow there's already a process that works for people to have their records wiped away. Why aren't we using it?
So you raised a really good point about, I don't call them jobs anymore. I've removed that from my vocabulary. I think a job is probably one of the worst things you can give someone that comes home from incarceration. We have to be thinking about a career. Like, how do we get people thinking about a career and that job that they may just get into, but what it's going to lead to, the end, and then what's next? And Michael and Sulaiman, I'm curious from both your perspectives. You guys are both in the workforce field. I have to be honest and tell you that I actually missed his talk in Washington last week, but Larry Miller was speaking at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce last Wednesday, and he spoke, and I was speaking right after him, and I was driving from Virginia and just missed his talk. Sorry, Larry. But the whole thing was about second chance opportunities and giving people that next shot. From both your perspectives, I know, Mike, I know for sure you kind of are all over this because you just ran a job fair not long ago that was just for people that have come home. And I know, Sulaiman, you also work in this space, but what is it that we need to do to get employers to embrace the notion that people coming home are just individuals, they have skills, they have talent, they just need opportunity?
So I think Larry mentioned something earlier that's very important. We need to invest in those who are behind bars to make sure that, as it was mentioned earlier, that they come out better than what they did coming in. And he took college classes. And it was mentioned, I think you said you took college classes as well. And it's that kind of thing, training while they're on the inside for trades and higher education, because we know from the data, over 70% of those that are incarcerated, many of them are high school dropouts. And so we need to address that. And I think, providing training programs where individuals can come out with a marketable skill, not just, some penny ante, education, but something that's going to be, relevant, something that's going to be marketable so that when they come out, they'll be, job ready. Without investing in that kind of training and development while they're on the inside, we know from data in the first 16 months of one's release, the highest recidivism occurs. Over 70% of recidivism occurs in the first 16 months. And so that's a lot of people going back. So if we're not training them so that when they come out, they're job ready and they have marketable talent, we're just going to see this revolving door. And people typically are going to default to what they know best. And if they know the streets, and many of the folks who've come out, they're streetwise, going in, and sometimes they come out hard, more hardened than they did going in. And so we got to do something about that. And I see that in the work that I do once they're released, we're trying to repair a lot of things that should have been done earlier in their life. And so we're trying to catch them up on some things, and it's hard. But I think investment in education programs, training programs, while they're in, is very important. And I want to give Jeff a shout out. When we had that job fair back in April, we had an exclusive job fair for those who are formerly incarcerated. And the Petey Greene organization paid for, I forget how many, but they paid for a lot of people to get their licenses restored. The Department of Transportation partnered with Jeff and had, for the first time ever in Pennsylvania history, a site set up to make sure that the men and women got their licenses or state IDs on premise. And that's an important piece because you can't get a legit job or career without certain identification. And I just want to give you a shout out because you helped a lot of people that day with your organization. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the work that we do is so important because many times you have organizations or individuals who are serving on boards that are serving in leadership roles who may be closest to the money but not necessarily closest to the issues or the challenges in our communities. You'll find many people like myself who may be first-generation college students or more empathetic, if you will, to communities that have been impacted by the justice system. Many times it's my story. I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. It was a predominantly white neighborhood, but on the weekends I was in Germantown, in the projects in Germantown, on Pulaski Street, 52nd and Pulaski, where my father lived. And so I saw the tale of two cities. My mother got an opportunity to become a clerical assistant for the city of Philadelphia, and got a decent job as a result of a nonprofit organization that gave second chances, or not to say second chance, but opportunity for someone who could type, if you will. And she was able to have upward mobility, where I saw this tale of two cities. And my father, who's a brilliant man, my teenage years became drug addicted to crack cocaine, and saw him in and out of the justice system because they've criminalized crack cocaine. I wanted to go to the NFL, and I had an older cousin who ran a 4.340. Anyone who knows 40-yard dash, that's very fast. Yeah. And I knew he was going to the NFL, and I wanted to go to the NFL. And he gave me a cautionary tale when he became a senior in high school, when he wasn't getting letters to colleges he wanted to go to because his grades weren't right. And that turned me around, where 8th grade got straight A's, and because again I wanted to play football, and started being high school straight A's, and started to be recruited to Ivy League schools, which I never even knew what an Ivy League school was, and ended up going to University of Pennsylvania, and realizing that there's this fine line between poverty and prosperity. Like my older brother and younger brother, all impacted by the justice system, and seeing doors closed on just brilliant folks who are talented and missing opportunities. So when we're in the boardroom, when we're in as an executive search firm or talent solutions firm, when we're talking to a hiring manager, and they have these false barriers because they're just used to just saying, oh, we need a degree, or we need, this person needs to have a clean record. And we say, why? What if you have a person who may have been, in the justice, justice involved, but, has X, Y, Z, these skills. And many times you can just challenge those paradigms and help to open up doors and make your presence felt in those rooms. And we want to scale that at a level where you have more empathy for those. And I love what the organization here is doing with just humanizing people like my friend here, Shu. I met him when he first came out. I'm good friends with his cousin, and you have people around you who you just know are just so brilliant, but the doors are being closed for unnecessary reasons. So if we can be in the room to be that influence, to be the advocates, to make sure that folks are getting those opportunities and they're not serving a life sentence for a mistake that they made, I think we're opening doors and creating opportunity.
Yeah, can I add something? Yeah. So I think absolutely, everything that's been said is right on point, and we should be looking to educate and to provide training and skill training for folks. But the other side of the coin is people have to be willing to accept the fact that this person has that skill set, even though they have this in their background. When I was about to graduate from Temple University with a degree in accounting, at the time it was what was known as the Big 8 accounting firms. And if you were an accounting student, your goal was to work for one of the Big 8. And I had kind of zeroed in on one that was called Arthur Andersen, and they were the one that I was kind of focused on. I ended up going there, spending a whole day interviewing with a number of people, and all day in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, should I share my background with these people? Because all they knew is I was a young black man about to graduate with honors from Temple University, and they were really interested. And so, like I said, all day I'm thinking in the back of my mind, should I share? Finally, I get to the last person, who is the hiring manager, and I decide that I'm going to share my background with this guy. And I kind of start telling him my story. And as I'm telling him, I can see his face changing, and not in a good way. And finally, when I got done, he said, wow, that's an amazing story. He said, and I'm sure you're going to do well. And he reached in his pocket, and he pulled out an envelope, and he said, I have an offer letter here that I was all ready to give you, but I can't give it to you now. He said, I'm sorry, I wish you the best, but I can't hire you. And at that point, my initial thought was, this is a waste of my time. I put in all this time and energy and money and everything to get a degree. They're not going to let me be an accountant. They're not going to let me do this because of my background. And I was this close to giving up and going back to what I knew. But I decided that I was going to continue to push forward. And finally, I ended up going to work for Campbell's Soup Company. And on the application that I filled out, the question was, have you been convicted of a crime in the last 5 years? Well, I could honestly answer that no. And from that point on, that's when I decided that I was not going to share my background at all anymore. If it came up, I wasn't going to deny. If somebody asked or whatever, I wasn't going to lie about it. But I wasn't going to volunteer it because I knew that that would hinder my ability to do what I was trying to do. And so to me, it's also about changing minds and changing mentalities, not just the folks who were incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, but the folks who are in decision-making roles and the folks who are hiring people and the folks who are providing opportunities for people. Those minds need to be changed as well. And like I said, we refer to that as the birth of the secret, because that's when I said, I'm no longer going to share this. And for almost 40 years, I kept this secret, but it was because I knew what society and how this system looks at people who have criminal, like, I applied for TSA pre 2 years ago, and they turned me down. And then my crime was like 50 years ago, but they turned me down because that kind of stuff is still hanging out there. And I think we just need to, again, society needs to move forward to a point where, you know, you serve your time, you stay out of trouble, you move forward with your life. It shouldn't be held against you what you've done in the past. And again, to me, if I am 100% certain if I hadn't kept secret my past, I would have never been able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish.
So it's kind of crazy because it happens all the time for all of us that have been justice impacted. And we struggle with that. I made a pledge to myself when I walked out 9 years ago that I was going to be open and transparent, that I had been secretive when my indictment came down as a lawyer in Philadelphia, and I could not, when I was sentenced, the day that I was sentenced, I had this tremendous relief off my shoulders that secret was gone. The media covered it, everyone was out there, and I couldn't see myself going back there again. But we put people in those positions, Brandon, and I want to ask Jeremy, both of you guys, like, how hard is it to tell your story and to come out and do what you do every day? And, you know, how do you work to try to change that narrative to the people that you're in front of?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off by saying, for me, my trajectory was really interesting because serving a 17-year prison sentence, getting my education, going on that journey, one thing that always haunted me was seeing guys cycle back in. And I always wondered, why is this? And so when I would talk to, you know, my brothers as they would come back in, and these are guys, sometimes they did 20 years and they were out for 8 months and they were back in for 15 more years, 20 more years. Sometimes they were in for 1 year and then they were back for another and then another and then another. And I would ask, you know, what was going wrong? And one of the things that I realized, well, it was actually two things, was one, people were afraid to tell their stories. And so it always got them in a position where they did exactly what Larry didn't do. They gave up, right? And said, I'm going to go to what I know. And number two, I realized that a lot of us in prison actually adopt the stories that are told about us. We internalize them. And so when I was able to enroll in a master's degree program, and I'll just say for context, I was the first person in the state of Maine's history to obtain a master's degree while incarcerated, which is cool. When people applaud, I appreciate that, but also it was in 2018. Why? You know, and that's what I always ask people, why was I the first? It makes no sense. And what I decided I wanted to study was narrative, because I wanted to understand how stories are affecting us, but also I wanted to understand how stories are continuing to keep the system doing exactly what it's been designed to do around all of it, right? Racial lines, around power, around disenfranchisement, around all of these different topics. And so that's when I really started to develop a high-level understanding, and I did what you said, Jeff. I told myself and I told my peers I'm never going to hide from my story, because I believe there's power in a story. And we all know that, right? That's why we go to the movies. It's why we listen to music. It's why we do all these things, because we know that there's power in a story. And so when the opportunity for the podcast came, you know, it's interesting. We talked about doors shutting. We talked about the importance of narrative. And we have a rack card on the table that says one of our jobs is to take the door off the American prison system, right? And it's literal. We literally got to take a door off of the American prison system, and now we use that as a vehicle for new narratives. And what we do is we tell the stories of all of you, right? We tell the stories of all of us. We tell the collective story to enlighten people around this country that we have created an understanding in our mind of incarceration on a moral binary, but the reality is that we didn't choose the things we went through. We didn't choose where we grew up. We didn't choose our trauma. We didn't choose a lot of these things. In a lot of ways, we didn't choose how we reacted to those things, and we definitely didn't choose the trauma of incarceration. So trying to humanize the stories, I keep hearing that too, is what really we feel like our job is, and we use this door as a piece of art because it's one of those things that when people see, it's unbelievable. When Jeremy says, that's my door, people say, what do you mean? And then the next question, and I think Jeremy will agree with this, we've talked to thousands of people, and nobody's ever not followed with, how did you get it? Because it's extreme, right? And so we know that there's power in the art because the art has a story, right? That door has a story. If you think about the countless thousands of men who suffered behind that door, that is a story. Jeremy has a story of transformation and redemption behind that door. So does Michael, who is with us here today, of hope and of redemption, of all the things that you spoke about as well, Larry, which is like, you know, I chose not to give up, but I had the cards stacked against me, right? And so there's power in a narrative, there's power in art. We know those things as a society, but we also believe that people who are in prison are bad. And so we try to use the power of art and the power of narrative to change that belief that people in prison have done bad, but they are good and they can do anything as long as we give them the means to do it.
Appreciate you. Yeah, it's storytelling for me has been personally a heal. It's a healing process. I think every time we can talk about what's happened for us, and we can tell a story. Also for the other men and women that are currently incarcerated. To feel like I can be a part of giving them a voice in the process is very important to me. I'm a person that's identified as a person in long-term trauma recovery, and I think what I know about trauma is that it's isolating, right? It wants you alone. It wants you to keep the secret, like Larry was talking about. And I think when more people can do it, we heal together as communities, right? Like, and so that's why I think it's important for us to tell our stories, because sometimes telling our story isn't about us. It's about the other person that's going to hear it and receive it. So I think collectively, when we tell stories, we can heal together.
Awesome.
Can I say one last thing about it?
You may.
Very quick. So, you know, it's interesting because we did something, well, I say we, Jeremy did something, and then, you know, as one of my closest friends included me in the process, he took control of his door physically, right? And so we have put this thing in the truck, and we've driven it all around the U.S., and we've set it on the steps of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. We've put it in the middle of Times Square. We've literally carried it up the steps of the Jefferson Monument. Right, we've brought it to these places to prompt conversations that couldn't happen if we weren't there with the door. But because Jeremy was able to obtain control of the door, we were able to change people's understanding of the door. The same way that once you take control of your own narrative, once you find the power in your own story, in your own narrative, you can start to control the outcomes a little better, and it doesn't always work. But what we know and what I hear in this table is that, you know, we love an inspirational story. And once you've gotten to that point where you have an inspirational story to tell, because people don't want to hear that, oh, I was locked up and I took a couple college classes and now I really want to do something great. What people want to hear is, oh, I was locked up and now I'm doing something great. And so there's timing that matters for a story, just like there was timing that matters for the door. And so a lot of it is, you know, people say, why would you want this door? Because for a lot of people, it represents some really terrible things, and it does for us as well. But we wanted the door because we wanted to reframe what it means and what possibilities lie within it. And we want to take back our stories and the stories of our communities because we want to reframe the potential and the possibilities that lie in those as well.
So I want to take your point, and I want to kind of take this to Laila, because I know I have a daughter who's 30 years old, wonderful woman, incredible, was with me my entire journey. But I often struggle with the harm that I caused my daughter being away from her during an important time in her life. And I always say that the sentence that I gave myself was far worse than anything a judge could ever give me, because it was a sentence that I live with every day, reliving and thinking about the people that I love, that I hurt. And I'm curious, I know this was an incredible experience because it brought you and your dad together in a certain way, but I wonder from that perspective, can you tell us a little bit about, is forgiveness, does that play a role in all of this? Is there room for this in this discussion of forgiveness and forgiving people? And, you know, how did you deal with some of that you worked through with your dad?
Forgiveness absolutely plays a role. And in my perspective, it starts within. You first have to learn and figure out a way to forgive yourself before you can expect to receive it from anyone else. And once you started that process and you start to communicate with the people that you love and the people around you and let them know in your most authentic way who you are and express to each other just in what ways you can help each other and you need each other. It's just a never-ending process. And you know, I'm a parent also, so one thing that has taught me is that I will screw it up. Like, we all will, but I'll do my best. We'll all do our best, but we're gonna screw it up. I screwed it up, he screwed it up, you'll screw it up. That's just the nature of this process. But it's okay, because we're all in it together, and at the end of the day, as long as love is the foundation, we will be okay. And we're okay. You know, it was ugly sometimes, it was funny sometimes, but like I said, at the end of the day, with love as the foundation, there is room for forgiveness, and we'll be okay. You know, we're okay.
So we've been talking a lot tonight. That's a great answer. Thank you. We're talking a lot tonight about changing the game. And by the way, Larry, I think if I had been in that condition when I was playing basketball, I would have had a shot at the Trailblazers. You would have been looking at me. But the white first Jewish, 5'10". But, I'm curious from each of you, though, there's a reality of what is broken in the system today, and I think we all recognize it, but I don't think we talk enough about changing the game. Like, how do we change the game? How do we fix it? And I want to give each of you a shot to kind of give me your spin on what do we need to do to fix this? We know there's a problem, and I think we're doing some things right, still not doing a lot in some other areas, but if we can just, who wants to kick us off? Michael, go ahead.
I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as a collective is to share with the public, to create this strong, positive narrative of success stories, and to let folks know that these success stories exist en masse. I mean, it's not an isolated case. We just hear the narrative that overwhelms us of the bad. But there's a lot of good out there of success stories where people are in careers, they've turned their life around in a huge way. And then with some of the policies that are being created by sympathetic lawmakers like here in Philadelphia, and we could do more, but the ban the box law in Philadelphia allows for anybody that was formerly incarcerated to go in an interview and not speak on their incarceration, but to talk about what they bring in terms of value and experience and enthusiasm to the job, and why, and you know, speaking their own narrative, why they should be the candidate of choice for that job. The ban the box law provides for that, right? And so they only have to disclose at the point of when they're ready to make an offer to that person or when they're ready to do a background check. So things like that, celebrating the success stories, putting those success stories out boldly and brazenly for the public, you know, in terms of articles and news coverage and social media highlights, so that people can have a more balanced diet of what's happening on the positive side of the fence than this full dose and avalanche of negativity that we get of those that have formerly served their time. Because what we're doing when we don't do that is we're giving them a second sentence.
And I mentioned my my cousin who ran a 4340. He later then was incarcerated for being an unlicensed cannabis distributor. Got 12 years in prison for something that's now, a legal business, if you will. And so there's inequities going into the system. There's inequities in the system. There's inequities coming out of the system. So I think that, one of the things that I try to do with the work that we do is put people in positions of influence that can change the system, right? That are decision makers and system makers in changing the game. So I think that's important. The policy makers that are sitting in these rooms, the judges, making sure that we have folks that understand, are educated, whatever background they are, but can empathize or sympathize with and humanize people who've made a mistake, right, and should have redemption opportunities.
And I'll say that I think three things can work. Number one, the system has continued to exist in the way it has because we've kept the stories isolated, we've kept the people isolated from community, and I think we need to find ways to open up opportunities, not just to humanize incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people through stories, but like indirect interaction, right? Because when I was incarcerated, every time the public had a chance to come in, they left wondering, like, why did I assume everybody in here was bad? I just had a heart-to-heart conversation and learned something from somebody. So we've erected walls, we've put barbed wire up, we've made people go through machines and pat-downs to visit your loved one. So imagine that the public doesn't want to come in. So I think we need to create more opportunities for interaction. Another thing that I firmly believe in, and I try to embody this anytime that I'm traveling and I'm working, is there's actually a lot of really big organizations that are preaching hiring directly impacted people. And I always ask them, how many do you have on your staff? Because that's the irony about it. The people that are funding it, the people that are preaching it, don't have a single directly impacted person on their staff. So when we stop, when our handshake matches our smile is when we'll change the game, right? So calling truth to power, I think, is important.
Yeah, I could follow up. I think we're all kind of saying it. Storytelling, I just jumped right into it. You're absolutely right what you said, Brandon. I do two things. I do more films where I get to tell stories. And first and foremost, what I try to focus on are people who are still grappling with these decisions, catch them early on and create content that can inspire them and get them to see themselves differently, their environment differently, how they show up to their environment differently, and the power that they possess differently. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach, but that's the route that I'm taking, is how do I inspire these young minds to see themselves in a powerful way and in a pro-social way? And then secondly, can I use that content to bridge gaps between different communities for us all to see each other in a humanistic way? And then through my nonprofit, Do More Good, exactly what you talk about, Brandon, in terms of how do I bring the impacted community together with the larger community to work on community-based projects like starting a garden or revitalizing a playground. We have a youth group. So those are the things that we actively do. Thank you.
Anybody else got a solution for us? Changing the game?
Other than restructuring the entire thing, re-overhauling the thing, no, but I think for me, I watched the reentry process. Right, we run a lot of recovery houses and reentry houses where we're getting guys out on the home confinement program up there, and they come out a year, 2 years early to do programming and get started early. But what I see most is that they're coming out and their mental health, the impacts of the trauma that they've been through while they've been incarcerated is not taken into consideration, right? I think a guy like me, it's I've seen some of the people I know are still incarcerated, or worse, they're on the streets, right? They're homeless and they're doing stuff, and it's not getting any better for them. And I think we need to focus the reentry process has to start on day one, right? Not 2 months before somebody gets out of prison. And not only that, the impact of things like solitary confinement on somebody's brain just as a human being, nothing else. It's that alone can exacerbate any other mental health symptom, and then you're going to ask that person to be held to the same standard as somebody that doesn't have this going on. It's an unfair system in a lot of ways, but I think with as smart as our country is to feel like the impact of the trauma somebody's brain has gone under just by being handcuffs put on you and put in a cage, that's going to be a traumatic experience for anybody, right? And so you get years of that, and you know, I see people struggling just with the anxiety of picking what I'm going to eat for dinner tonight, or where I'm going to go shopping for clothes and things like that. Those are the things that drove me back into substance use, right? Because that's the only thing I knew reliable enough to turn that off. So I think creating a system that takes that into account at this point would be helpful for us.
Trauma-informed care, our breed. Big thing. Yeah. Larry, go ahead. No, because I'm coming to you now because I spent a day with you and we talked, and I was kind of surprised no one on this panel mentioned the one thing that I thought was why I'm here and do the work I do, which is education. And Larry, I was wondering, how did you feel today talking to some of those people at Beyond Literacy and at Central, and how important is education? Is that one of the solutions?
Yeah, I definitely think education is a key component of people being able to change their lives. To me, I think right now, somebody gets out, they basically don't have anything when they come out, and maybe can get a minimum wage job if they're lucky. I think one of the ways we can change the system is start early, while people are still incarcerated, start training people, start provide, and where there are education programs, start to expand those programs. The program I got involved in and was able to use to get my education doesn't exist anymore. It was eliminated in the mid-90s. And so if I was coming out today, I couldn't do what I've been able to do. And I think the more we can provide opportunities for people to learn and be able to make a living wage, not just come out and, you know, because 9 times out of 10, getting a minimum wage, that's going to lead eventually back to jail. And I just think the more if we could say, and I think part of it to me is also we're going to have to get corporate America involved. I mean, to me, if a company said, you know what, people have 3 years left on their sentence, are eligible to get into this program, we're going to train you for the next 3 years, and when you get out, there's a job waiting for you making $75,000 a year. People would line up for that kind of opportunity. And so to me, it's like that's how we can change the game. Start to provide more and greater opportunities for people to be able to learn things that are going to provide them an opportunity to have a sustainable living.
So the reality is we have more jobs in our country today that are open than we have people to fill them. And we have this untapped labor market of people that are just as impacted sitting out there, and yet corporate America today remains reluctant to really engage and hire people. And I think some of it is education. Education, to me, is one of the cornerstones of the solution that we have to look to. And when I say education, I'm talking digital literacy. Learn how to use a computer while you're away. We have 2 gentlemen here from Maine. Maine is probably the most progressive state when it comes to internet, digital literacy, and actually accessing the internet from behind the walls, which is crazy. It's something that was almost unheard of in almost every state, accessing the internet for men that are incarcerated, women that are incarcerated, but they've opened that door up, beginning to change the dialogue. Financial literacy, understanding how to save money, how to use money. And then I also think there's a bigger picture in this, which is a statistic I read recently, which was the greatest determinant of a child's educational achievement in their lifetime is the education of their parents. And if we can help mom and dad get smarter in this journey, that's one of the ways or pathways to getting out of generational poverty. And
it was interesting. You mentioned that we were over at the program today, and it was interesting because we went into one of the classrooms, and talking to one of the guys who was kind of older brother, I mean, maybe 50s, 60s, but he was saying that up until this point, he didn't have the courage to get his GED and to start, because it takes courage to do that. And he's absolutely right. I mean, and there was another guy I talked to who was, again, in his 60s, and he was learning to read. And so, again, it's like removing those obstacles. And that's why he was doing. He said, you know, he had worked for a lot of years for a company and got to a point where he knew he was qualified for a job, but he just didn't even apply for it because he didn't have a high school diploma, and he knew that was a barrier that they put up there for him to try to get over. So, yeah, I mean, education is absolutely a key, but we also have to, like I said, get people to accept the fact that once you have that degree or that training or that skills, that they're going to give you the opportunity.
I love it. So I want to ask, we have a little bit of time. I want to ask each of you one question. We have a great audience here, and our audience is thinking to themselves, well, how can I change the game? What is it that I can do to change the game as a citizen of the community or in the work that I do? Come on, we got to give them some guidance. How can they change the game? What is it going to look like? What can they do?
Listen to Behind the Door podcast. But in all seriousness, have curiosity is my best piece of advice for people, because I could give you some specific instructions about contacting your local legislator, about you know, making some phone calls and doing this and doing that because of what you heard today, but your curiosity should go deeper than today. And so, you know, start asking questions, start meeting people, start compiling your own inner library of stories of successful people who have been formerly incarcerated and of people who have not been successful, and ask why. Have that curiosity to get a little bit deeper and understand the complexity of the experience of, you know, being impacted by this criminal justice system. And then, like, at the end of the day, you can do the one thing that every single one of us in this room, regardless of our background, wants. Like, if you meet somebody who's justice impacted, treat them with dignity. It's really simple, you know. It's the golden rule. Treat them the way that you would want to be treated, regardless of their background, and have curiosity to ask them what they need, what they want, what they desire, and what they dream of.
Lila, what do you got?
Yes, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, we can all start by confronting our own biases and embracing, you know, the fact that half of the people in this room are related to someone who is justice affected. It's just a fact. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of it. And once we understand it, accept it, and also accept the fact that what happens to them happens to us. We are all in this mess together. So if we warehouse them, if we push them to the side, to the margins of society, eventually it will come back on us. So there's no way out of it. We all have to just kind of dig in with each other, love on each other, help each other as much as possible. And that's pretty much the only way that the needle, that's how we move the needle, in my opinion. And that's where the policy changes and the concrete shifts actually happen. It starts right here, so.
Yeah, I think, you know, what they said, and to provide opportunities for people if you are able to do that. And I use this quote all the time, but there's a college that, and I don't remember the college, but their commercial has a line in it that says, in this world, talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. And that's real. And so the more we can help to provide opportunities for people on a day-to-day basis, I think that can move the needle. And, you know, providing opportunities for people who have been justice impacted and people who are starting from behind the starting line, and helping those folks to, you know, to get to the starting line and to be able to take advantage of opportunities that exist for them as well.
Celebrate and promote the success stories. You have a doctoral candidate, you have a CEO, you have a gentleman who's the chairman of a billion-dollar brand, billion-dollar plus brand. You have an author, multi-billion dollars. I'm sorry, multi-billion dollars. You have an author who celebrated her dad in writing a book about this great, wonderful turnabout story. You have an individual filmmaker, and you have someone who's providing housing and drug counseling and services, which is a big deal for those that are coming out, because a lot of reentry folks are experiencing mental issues and drug issues, and they don't have enough services when they get out. So to speak about these types of successes and to take your time, your talent, and your treasure. We all have time, talent, and some of us a modicum of treasure, right? But use that where you can, fit in where you can. If you feel you could be a great voice, then that's your talent, use your voice. If you think you can leverage some of your finances towards a cause, then do that. You know, you have some causes that you can put your resources behind. But we all have time, talent, and treasure that we can leverage towards the cause. And wherever you feel you can fit in, nothing's too small and nothing's too great in terms of what you can give towards the cause. But we need to celebrate the victories, get these positive stories out on Front Street, as they used to say back in my day. Did I just date myself?
You did.
But to do that.
I'll share what I share with our folks who go through our board program that we then place on boards all throughout the region. We always share with them, it's not about diverse faces in high places. It's about making sure your presence is felt in the boardroom. From the mailroom to the boardroom, you know, how is your presence felt? And if you ever sat around those board tables and, you know, we've normalized some of the inequities that go on. People just, it's just second nature that we just continue to do it. And sometimes it takes courage. You know, it took courage. I was in a room with folks and you know, this is a few years ago, and all these resources going to Kensington, Philadelphia, and I saw what happened in North Philadelphia. I saw what happened in West Philadelphia when folks were dealing with crack cocaine and drugs and how they criminalize it, and how a whole different story later. And I had to stop the room and just tell my story and just share my story, and it changed the narrative in the room. And it takes courage sometimes to be the only one to step up. And you get fatigued after a while, being that one to say again and again, like, let's pause for a second, like, let's, and many times it could impact your career, all kinds of things, but we have to have the courage to have that constructive conflict in the room and not just get along, go along, but be that voice and leverage that influence, leverage being in the room to change the narrative, if you will. Good trouble. There you go.
Shoot.
Yeah, I go. I want to echo what Mike said. Do you do marketing? I might need you on the team, man. Amplifying and promoting, you know, the message. We got My Secret Journey from the Streets to the Boardroom, a book. It's easy to just post it up, throw it in your story, put it on your social media. Brandon, Jeremy, what's the name of your podcast? Behind the Door podcast. Super easy to promote that. You can go to pardonsnow.org to find out about my project. The name of the film is called Pardon Me. My social media is my first and last name. Definitely amplify the message. And I do want to shout out Sul. You know, as you learn about these stories, and then you start to move about your life, and you're going to come across somebody that may have a troubled past, made a wrong decision. And Sul definitely welcomed me with open arms, probably partly from the relationship that he had with my cousin, but also because he had lived experience with people in his family that he knew had troubled past. So, you know, I really can't. You had said something earlier. You talked about like picking something to eat, picking something to wear. I've done 12 years. You've done 17 years. Like, it's a real struggle when you have to make these day-to-day decisions that you never had to deal with for over decades of your life. And so now, you know, it's almost information overload where it's like, what kind of coffee, what kind of creamer, what kind of like, it's all these different choices to make, and it's a struggle to try to really pick one. And you can find yourself in a room being swallowed by the room, and have somebody like a Sul that just puts his arm around you. He comes with a big reputation in Philly and say, you know, I got you, or let me walk you in this room, or let's help navigate around this stuff. It means more than what I can even convey right now. So when you come across somebody like that, putting an arm around them, letting them know, hey, I see you, I got you, you know, in this moment in time, we can get through this together, is a way to support.
Martin Luther King said, we live together like brothers or perish like fools. And I think like that, if we can keep that philosophy on a daily basis, we're going to do better off. At the end of the day, there's people that are separated from our society that shouldn't be. And I think when I look at the bigger picture around it, it's like we need to make sure we're at the voting booth to make sure the right people are in control of the country, right? I think what's important about some of the work that's being done, talked about tonight, is that like we're going to create more voters and more like the system does not want us educated in a lot of ways, right? They want us in there because they want to make more money off us at the end of the day. And I think there needs to be an end to a privatized prison system, like the privatized prisons are controlling our politicians. You know what I mean? And I think like we have to look at it like this could potentially be a family member that's here. It could be any of us. You know what I mean? You could go home and something could happen tonight. You could be taken away from your family, and the next thing you know, you're in the middle of it. So I think it's really important to get to the voting booth and make sure that education movements inside prisons are there. I think that's the biggest thing. I finally just want to thank Petey Greene for having me out here tonight and sitting next to these giants. I appreciate it.
So just a big hand for our entire panel tonight. Just a great job. We're not done yet. So we got a little bit more to do. One is, Laila, stand up. So this is something Laila is she's got commitments in Washington tomorrow, and we were going to do it tomorrow night, but we'd like to give you this presentation. It's Catalyst for Change Award through the Petey Greene program, and it's for inspiring those with lived experience to achieve their dreams. But on behalf of the Petey Greene program, so there's a lot of things that we can do. I'm going to open up the floor up for questions. A few things I want to mention is making change happen and changing the game means sometimes getting off of your seat and doing something, just taking some small action. And I tell this story because there was a time when I had given a speech to a really large ballroom, and before I got there, I had them turn all of the seats from the tables around so they were facing the back of the room. And as people filtered into this ballroom, there's about 1,000 seats in there, they gradually turned the chairs around and faced the front of the stage. And it was really a social experiment, just to prove that, they noticed that something was really wrong because they couldn't see the speaker facing the wrong direction, and they turned their seats around. And I think we all need to change the game by turning your seat around. And that means taking an action to make change happen, to do something. And we know that there are many flaws in our criminal legal system today, but changing it means all of us need to do some little thing to make change happen. I was appalled recently to find out that in our juvenile justice system here in Philadelphia, that we do not have a parent-teacher association. It is probably, I can't think of another school or school district that doesn't have some parent-teacher organization that helps support the school in providing things like lunch meals or birthday presents or whatever they might need to function as a school for the children, especially in Philadelphia where our budgets often are for schools are often in challenge. And this was all prompted by Larry because Larry wanted to go back to the Philadelphia Youth Detention Center. We're going there tomorrow morning, and we're going to meet with a whole bunch of students there and really share with them and talk to them and spend the morning there. And they were so grateful. But I walked out of the meeting when I asked them if we could come back to visit, they said, well, can you help us with some things? I'm like, don't you have an organization or a school district can help you? And they said, no, we don't have any of that. And I say all this because tomorrow night, for those that are not coming, I'm giving you an invitation. It is on me. You're all welcome to Going Green, which is our big fundraising event for the year. And we are having it at Rivers Casino. We'll be hosting and honoring Larry Miller tomorrow night. There'll be fun games. There'll be sports memorabilia. We'll just be enjoying the night, food, doors open at 6:30 tomorrow night, or 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So come down and enjoy the night with us. But I raise that because it is a way that we can all give back. But I was a little frustrated by not having a PTA at the Juvenile Justice Center. So received a phone call this morning, and a very generous donor said to me that if you were any donation that was made in a 24-hour window, including tonight, to the Petey Greene program, they would match dollar for dollar, and those funds would go to help support and start the PTA program at the Philadelphia Juvenile Justice System. So we'll make the pitch again, but if your organization can make a pledge to the Petey Greene program, we will, I promise you, we will make sure that that donation is matched, and that money will go to the laundry list of things. They gave me a 10-page book of things that they need there, and we'll chip away at helping them provide what we really need in our juvenile justice system, which is a hand. Yeah, John.
Thank you all. I have a PhD, and I've learned more from Shu, and getting to know him in the past couple of years than from anything I learned in the classroom. Between my experience working with Shu on the film and Toby Oxholm, who introduced us and inspired the Economy League to write a report on partners as an economic investment strategy, to fill in that piece. Your stories are super powerful. We work in data, right? We want to persuade policymakers how stupid they are and penny-wise and pound-foolish they are with the system as it now exists. And I'll go anywhere, use my privilege as the 57-year-old privileged white dude to do whatever's necessary to change the system. But the question, Shu had me up in Harrisburg when we had this conversation with the Legislative Black Caucus. I wish it was a Legislative White Caucus, because those are the people that need to hear this, right? Because the prison system in Pennsylvania is basically an employment program for rural Pennsylvania, the feedstock of which is black men from Philadelphia. But someone asked, I said, can someone answer me this question? Why is it okay for Shumore to live next to me in my neighborhood, but not have a shot at using his amazing skills and abilities to get a job? Why can't, no one can answer that question. Why, if you are eligible to be released from prison into society, why do you have to carry this record around and spend 5 to 7 years of your life fighting for a pardon? Can anyone answer that question? That to me is the key question. What is the point of the whole post-incarceration system, the so-called returning citizen, which is just a bunch of bullshit, because it's a second-class citizenship, right? What's the answer to that question? I'm being sort of rhetorical, but not. Like, what's the answer to that question? Because it's a fundamental.
Come on, we got some experts up here. What do you think?
I mean, I'll just say that the answer to that question is the answer to every question, that the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And so the second-class citizenship is not a new phenomena, right? It all follows Jim Crow. It all follows immediately, post-slavery. And our system has been formed as the funnel that you just described. And so we know this through a lot of literature that's come out. We call it a colorblind system. It is not. The data shows us it's not. The stories show us it is not. And so the moment that you open up that mechanism for one, you have to open up that mechanism for all. There's a lot of high-level advocacy going on in the United States right now around clemency and pardons, and it's an upward fight. It's an uphill fight because, and this is, I'm going to nerd out for a second. The power of narrative is that it makes us blind to the oppression that is obvious, right? So people, it's fear is what it is. And that fear has been instilled in us over the last couple of hundreds of years. It's generational, right? The same way trauma is. The fear that we face around reforming our system is generational. And so the reason there is no good answer is because we've been force-fed fear our whole lives for multiple generations, that we don't actually need a good answer why we don't do it. We just inherently believe it's the right or the wrong thing to do. And so that's what the system has been created to do within us. And so that's why stories matter, right? Because it's getting new stories out there that actually call into question the moral binary and the fear.
I know we saw another hand. If you can hold 1 second, Margie's going to bring a microphone to you.
Thank you. A statistic that was brought up a lot was the fact that 50% of the people in the room, 50% of the families have someone that's justice impacted in their family, right? You all have amazing stories, but I feel like we're hearing the story at the end, right? We're hearing the story, it's like PhD candidate. We're not hearing the story, it's like, I also left the prison system with no money and nothing to do. And we're all the family members of people that are going to be going through that or have gone through that at some point. I know it might be personal, but I would love to know like day one, right? Because this is my family, this is so many other families. How do you help, especially when you're in a state that maybe doesn't have a lot of support? For me, it's always been the struggle in that portion of narrative for someone who just wants to be a regular person is like, I was incarcerated in Delaware. My parole officer's in Delaware. Somebody has a great job for me in Philly, but the parole officer's like, nope, can't cross state lines. And I'm like, please, like I need a job. You want me to have a job. I want me to have a job, but you won't let me do the thing to get it. Or I'm in Jersey. My one family member in Jersey lives in the suburbs. I can't get into any cities on my own. There's no public transit here, and it's making it so I can't work, and there's no housing available because once you're a returning citizen, you don't qualify for any housing programs, right? So like that is, at least at a personal level, those are the really tough things, and I'm just curious how you guys were able to overcome that and what family did and what community did to help you make that jump, because that is going to be the 50%, right? That is the responsibility we all have at a personal level.
I can go. I do want to, going back to the first question, you know, our elected officials, when they jump out there, we need to push back. You know, when election cycles come on and it's, this person's tough on crime because of this, or, you know, we're supporting law enforcement here. You know, law enforcement, as much as we need them, they are not the answer to our social ills. And so, to your point about this narrative stuff, when an election cycle is going on like it is right now, we have to push back on our electeds and ask them, what are you doing for the justice impacted community? Because most people serve time after they serve time way longer, you know, dealing with this stigma than the actual punishment for whatever choice they made. So we have to push back on them because they are leading the charge, and our votes matter. They want our votes. If you want our vote, then what are you doing for this community that I have to live with? These are my neighbors, my Uber drivers, my bus drivers, my, you know, clerks at the grocery store, or a person at my job. And to the second question, I mean, there's no easy answer. One is reentry doesn't start when you get out. Reentry starts while you're in. You know, my transformation started while I was in, putting my nose in books. I'm on this panel because of the Petey Greene program. They go inside and educate people. There was no Petey Greene when I was in there. I was fortunate enough to have parents and family members that supported me throughout my incarceration. That's another aspect of this. You support throughout, when you're not even able to love yourself, to have family members that are still able to love you and support you and hold your feet to the fire is everything. That's the difference between me and somebody who committed the same crime at the same time but went back to prison. I've had people that were going to always love me and support me through my own struggles. It is not easy. There is no manual. I really can't overemphasize. I think that investment in education while people are incarcerated, and education tailored to the life experience of the people that go in. You know, last thing I'll say is, when you think of somebody who just re-entered prison, it's not a monolith. Just not just like one individual with no housing and no education and no nothing. There are people that have tons of support. There are people that come out that may have more money than you. You know, you just don't know. And then there are the people on the other end of the extreme that have absolutely nothing. So re-entry programs need to be tailored to the true situation that a person is re-entering from. You know, I had housing. I had friends. I had a network, but I didn't know how to utilize those things, and I didn't know how to show up. For the first few years, I didn't use my name. I didn't want to be Googled, none of that stuff. But fortunately for me, I was able to reframe my narrative, and it wasn't until I actually owned it that I was able to have some doors open, because I was able to explain through what had caused me to go to prison, my transformation afterwards, and what my mission was. So there's a lot, I don't want to get too long-winded, but like there's a lot of, I think there's 4 core categories people need to learn while incarcerated. Self-awareness, problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, and the ability to communicate. Those 4 things are what allowed me to really have a successful incarceration, but really more than anything, have a successful reentry. And I'll leave it there.
So, no, Larry mentioned something this morning. We were asked kind of a similar question this morning at Central, and my answer was about self-responsibility. And it really takes an individual to be responsible for their journey coming home. And look, I came home, I lived in a shelter for the first year and a half, and one of the first people that had their hands out was Mike Robinson, bringing me into a program, and just somebody that was just there that could reach out. But to this day, I'm very self-reflective over everything that happens in my life, and I own that. I own the choices that I made in the past. I own the choices that I'm going to be making in the future, and it's not easy coming home. And families and people in the public, just in general, there's a great line, I use it all the time, but I think we all need to be curious and not judgmental. And we need to ask those questions. What do you need, and how can we help you in a non-judgmental way that people are okay to say? Look, the 3 hardest words for anyone that's justice impacted to say are, I don't know. They're the 3 hardest words. And they come home and they need to be able to say, I don't know how to get a bank account. I don't know how to get my driver's license. I don't know how I'm going to get my payroll this week. I don't know how I'm going to get to work. I don't know how I'm going to get work boots. I don't know how I'm going to. So we need to ask those questions, and we need to be really curious. And as a society, community, as family members, we need to be open to the reality that they may not know how to use a computer or a cell phone or any of those things, and really start digging down and be really granular on it. But for me, it was self-responsibility for that kind of thing.
Or pick chips at the grocery store, because I'm 3 years out and I still struggle with that. Like, because I need somebody to walk me into common everyday space. It took me 4 hours at a mall yesterday to pick out 2 pairs of shoes. Because it's overwhelming, you didn't have choice, and so it is. It's about the curiosity. Like, make space for people to say, I don't know how to do everyday things that you've never even thought about doing, because it's part of your daily routine.
And I think everyone should recognize this too. There's a great study out that says that within 120 days of someone's release, they actually want to go back to prison. Because if you think about it, inside of a prison cell, you have 3 meals a day. You're in a relatively secure environment, relatively. You adapt in culture, but you're there. You don't have a cell phone. You don't have any bills to pay. You don't have to worry about a roof over your head or family or any of that. And it's really a safe place for a lot of people. And that's one of the biggest problems, is we don't make it any easier for people to come home to really navigate some of that. So I think that's it. And then, Jeff, to your point, so I've been a huge fan of the Economy League, and I will tell you that the study that was done is remarkable, but it proves one point, which is that a person without data is just another person with an opinion. And the more data that we can have to support the needs of people going through the system when they come home, the better off we're going to be in helping to solve this problem. And you're right, Jeff, it comes down to money sometimes, especially when legislation and legislators in our government, but we need the data to support what will make change happen, and education is just proven to make that happen. Anyone else? We have time for one last question. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tamika Tanksley. I am the program director for Compass Pro Bono in Greater Philadelphia, and I'm here for a few reasons. Number one, we offer free strategic consulting to local nonprofits, and Petey Greene is one of our new clients. Receiving a funding strategy. And what we do is we work with local nonprofits to help enhance their impact. So I'm here because I loved learning about Petey Greene. I just went through your file and I saw a photo of a young man who was, one of the volunteers was teaching and working with him. And it touched me, right? It warmed my heart. So I came here not knowing what to expect, but just open to learning. And the thing that hugged me was storytelling. And storytelling, it's a thing that I've done my whole life. In fact, recently I was just named Best Philly Storyteller. And thank you. And it helped me realize not only do I talk in stories, but I listen in stories. And so in listening tonight, one of the things we always hear is about playing the game. You know, you hear somebody, oh, you gotta learn to play the game. But to the question that was asked, it's time to learn to change the game. And we change the name by changing the narrative, change the game by changing the narrative. And the stories that I heard, it reminds me that there's more than one way to success. Right, we heard successful stories, and even Larry, when you spoke about him giving you holding the envelope to say, you know, I wish I could, but I can't. That was a detour that gave you a story that was probably greater than that accounting job would ever give. Just like it's more than one way to get to Jersey from Philly, more than one bridge, right? So I think that to the point that was made tonight, we need to hear more of those stories, the good, the bad, the ugly cry part of the story, to just encourage people, and I encourage others to listen with an open heart, a closed mouth, and an empathetic ear. You know, like when we say to people, how you doing? And we don't even stand still long enough for them to really tell us. And if they catch us and they start really telling us, you know, I've seen them do it to me. They're like, oh my God, why did I ask? But if we could just learn that understanding so we don't judge the book by the cover, right? So we don't just do the cliff notes of what we think we know, but allow people to tell their own narrative, because that's how we really change the game and doing that work. And you almost had me when you started talking about local politics. Sulaiman already know that's a button for me. So if you want to, you know, talk a little later, I'm all down. But again, you know, to your point, they want your vote, but then they don't, right? Because are they really doing what, you know, they love to say we work for you, but sometimes they are a no-show, no-call, and insubordinate, but I'm not going to go on that way. Anyway, so I just wanted to just thank you, and I look forward to working with you, Jeff. Look forward to seeing the program. It's absolutely amazing. I already gave because I believe in it, and not because I had to, because I wanted to. And it's important for us, and I'll end with this. Thank you. It's important for us to put our money where our mouth is, because it takes resources to move the needle. We talk about moving it, it takes resources to do that. And so we got to start. We put it on other things that give us absolutely nothing. So it's time to really put it on things that's going to really do something, not just for us, but for our society. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. So we have one last piece of business, and that is, does anyone have a birthday that they celebrated this week? You do back there? Friday. Get up here. Get up here. Here's a copy of no, for you. Nice. There you go. Happy birthday. Anybody else have a birthday this month? Come on up here. Rob? You're getting one anyway, so come on, Rob. And Rob Reed, you guys should know, was with the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania and is the lead and the head of the Pennsylvania Reentry Council, and I've had the pleasure of working with Rob since its inception. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Going Green is just an amazing, it's going to be an amazing event tomorrow night, but the Petey Greene program is going to be around forever. And we look forward to working with everyone. If you want to get involved in the program, just Google Petey Greene program. There's lots of ways of volunteering, getting engaged. I want to thank my staff that's here, Margie, Fiona, McKaylee, who was with us all day and has been working on the Petey Greene program. Thank you so much. But thank you all for coming tonight. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you tomorrow night at the Going Green program or in the coming weeks. So also big shout out to the Economy League and Jake Dawson, Jake from the Sattel Institute here. Jake, stand up for a second. Just amazing organization, and they've helped us tonight too, so thank you. So thank you everybody, and to our hosts, to our guests, Larry and Laila, we wish you safe travels tomorrow. And for you, we're not done with you yet. We got one more night with you. We're going to have some fun tomorrow night. I would ask the panelists as you walk off, we do have a small token of appreciation for you. If you can walk off this side, we'll give it to you. So good night, everybody. Please do not be do not worry. We have plenty of desserts left. They're from Phil Abundance Culinary Kitchen. They were all made by returning citizens. Please take some cookies and cakes home with you to your family.